Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel, and today I'll be presenting an ethical analysis based on Kantian philosophy. The topic is Kantian ethics and corporate responsibility, evaluating workers' rights violations. Specifically, we'll examine the issue of corporations that operate sweatshops or factories with poor labor conditions, using the example of garment factories in Bangladesh. Overview. This presentation is structured into four main parts. First, I'll introduce Kantian ethics and the idea of the categorical imperative. Then I'll explain the real-world scenario of a corporation violating workers' rights. After that, we'll apply all three formulations of Kant's categorical imperative to that scenario. Finally, I'll offer a summary of the moral assessment and discuss broader implications for business ethics. Introduction to Kant's ethics. Kantian ethics is a deontological theory. That means it focuses on the moral duty behind actions, not their consequences. For Kant, the only thing that is good without qualification is a good will. A will that acts out of respect for the moral law. According to him, we act morally when we do our duty simply because it is our duty, not because we want to achieve some particular outcome. Categorical imperative overview. Kant's main moral rule is the categorical imperative. It is a command that applies to all rational beings at all times, regardless of desires or outcomes. There are three core formulations of the categorical imperative, and all three help us determine whether an action is morally acceptable. In this presentation, I will apply all three to the issue of workers' rights violations. Scenario background. Let's consider a case where a multinational company outsources its clothing production to a factory in Bangladesh. In this factory, employees work excessively long hours, receive wages that are below the national minimum, and are exposed to unsafe working environments. These conditions are widely recognized as violations of international labor standards, including those established by the International Labor Organization. Formulation 1. Universal law. Kant's first formulation says we should only act according to a maxim that we can consistently will to become a universal law. Suppose the maxim is, it is acceptable to exploit workers to increase profit margins. If every business adopted this principle, worker exploitation would become a norm, ultimately undermining the dignity and rights of all workers. This leads to a contradiction because the very system of labor would become unsustainable. Therefore, this maxim cannot be universalized, making it morally impermissible under this formulation. Analysis of Formulation 1. Under the first formulation, the action of exploiting workers is unethical because it cannot logically be applied as a universal rule. It would create a world where workers are routinely mistreated, which contradicts the very idea of a just and orderly society. According to Kant, this means the action fails the universalization test and violates our duty to others. Formulation 2. Humanity as an end. Kant's second formulation states that we should always treat others as ends in themselves, and never merely as means to an end. In the case of sweatshops, corporations use workers merely as tools to increase production and reduce costs. There is little to no respect for their autonomy, health, or well-being. By reducing workers to instruments of profit, these companies deny the workers' intrinsic moral worth, which violates this formulation. Analysis of Formulation 2. The moral failure here is clear. The corporation does not treat the workers as people with goals, rights, and dignity. It ignores their humanity and prioritizes profits over ethical responsibility. Kant argues that every human being deserves to be treated as a moral agent, not as a disposable resource. Therefore, this action again fails the ethical test. Formulation 3. Autonomy and moral law. Kant's third formulation emphasizes autonomy and the idea that each individual must be able to see themselves as a legislator of universal moral law. In this context, the corporation is not only making unethical decisions, it is also acting in a way that no rational moral agent could endorse. Exploiting workers is not a rule that can be adopted by all as a fair and just principle. The action disregards the shared moral framework required for a community of rational beings. Analysis of Formulation 3. Formulation 3 stresses mutual respect and universal moral law. By choosing to violate workers' rights, the company effectively says, "We're above the moral law." But Kant insists that no one is above morality. Each moral agent must act as if their decisions could be accepted by all others. This corporate behavior breaks that social and moral contract and thus fails this ethical standard as well. Summary of ethical assessment. In summary, the corporation's actions fail all three formulations of the categorical imperative. The maxim cannot be universalized. The workers are treated merely as means, and the autonomy of rational agents is disrespected. According to Kantian ethics, these actions are not only unkind or careless, they are morally wrong, regardless of any economic benefits. Broader implications. Kantian ethics suggests that companies have moral obligations that go beyond legal compliance. Respecting workers is not just good business, it is a matter of principle. This means ethical sourcing, fair wages, and safe working environments are duties that corporations must uphold. Reforming global supply chains to respect these duties is an ethical necessity, not a public relations choice. References. This analysis draws from key sources, including Kant's Groundwork for the Metaphysics of Morals, Norman Bowie's Business Ethics, A Kantian Perspective, and reports from organizations like the International Labor Organization and Human Rights Watch. I've also used insights from our course readings on deontological ethics to support the arguments. Thank you.